Overpaying for anything sucks, especially socks, so why pay $45 for a single pair of grip socks when you can spend less than half? Pure Grip Socks Pro feature our best materials for optimal fit, moisture wicking, and performance at a fair price, just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
While you might not like the way that they've done it, the top-end Copa Pure offerings for 2023 do an excellent job of reviving the modern Copa series, with Adidas now offering leather football boots that are genuinely competitive compared to their competition. But what about the less expensive models? If you don't have $230+ to spend, are the Copa Pures still any good? Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the brand new Adidas Copa Pure Point 2, the first takedown model in the new Pure lineup, retailing for a full $100 less than the Point 1 model above it at $130. And as you can see, they're football boots that look eerily similar to the more expensive variation, featuring a fusion skin upper combining textile and cow skin leather, a low-cut construction, a central lacing system, and even a sole plate that looks a lot like what you'll find on the top version. However, looks can be slightly deceiving. And while there are definitely some very positive similarities between the Point 2 and the Point 1 models, there are certain aspects about this football boot that very much make it feel like a pair of takedowns. And obviously, when you're talking about football boots at a lower price point, value for money becomes a question. And the question in my mind becomes, should you buy the Copa Pure Point 2 or the similarly priced Nike Tiempo Legend 9 Pro, or perhaps the less expensive New Balance 442 version 2 Pro? That's exactly the question that I hope to answer for you as we go over all the details of the Pure Point 2, talk about how they compare to the Pure Point 1, how they compare to the competition, and of course how they fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around, and if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And as always, if you guys enjoy these brutally honest reviews, perhaps want to see more takedown models on the channel, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2023. So first things first, like I mentioned, the Pure Point 2 looks a heck of a lot like the Pure Point 1. However, when you get these two boots in your hand, and especially on your feet, it is immediately noticeable that the Pure Point 2 weighs significantly more, which is why we're going to compare the two using a scale in real time, both in the same size 9.5 US. We'll start off with the Point 1 model, and it weighs in at 8.05 ounces, the equivalent of 228 grams, which is relatively lightweight for this style of football boot. We'll throw on the Point 2, and you can see that they weigh in at 9.85 ounces, the equivalent of 279 grams, almost 2 full ounces more than the Pure Point 1, which, like I said, is very noticeable and kind of trends to almost the same weight as a pair of classic Copa Mundials. And that's not to say that the weight alone is reason not to want the Copa Pure Point 2, but I think most people would tend to prefer something with a little bit less weight to it, especially when you're talking about a boot with this thin of an upper. And again, when you compare it to its similarly priced or lower priced competition in the Nike Tiempo and the New Balance 442, both of those football boots are closer to the weight or lighter than the Pure Point 1, again, for less money than these. As for the upper, it feels really nice. I would describe it as a slightly more structured take on what's on offer from the fusion skin found on the Pure Point 1 and Pure Plus. You're still gonna get that cow leather in the front, which is definitely on the softer side of things, not quite as soft as the top end models, but as far as football boots in this price range go, I don't think anyone should be complaining about the quality of the leather. It spans basically through the forefoot. The cutoff point is right here, goes across the top of the toes, and then kind of cuts off right around here on the medial side. So again, as far as leather football boots go, you can get more leather for less money. The rest of the upper is kind of like this padded textile synthetic material that admittedly is quite a bit thicker than what you're going to find on the Point 1, but like I said, makes for a more structured feel, and in general isn't overly stiff in any way. The upper does feel very comfortable against your foot. However, this is one of those football boots that I think a lot of people would look at and kind of assume that they have an old school feel. In general, these are still relatively thin on the ball, especially the front area that has super thin leather. There's not not a lot of padding to be had from this. So if you're looking for something that is kind of going to offer that more padded, slightly protective leather-like sensation, you're really not getting that from the Pure Point 2, Pure Point 1, or Pure Plus. This, like I said, is offering borderline a barefoot sensation. And then across the top of the foot, you will find a central lacing system, a standard U-throat construction with a standalone tongue. However, that standalone tongue is, again, a super thin, really flexible neoprene material. There are some very thin memory foam pads running through the middle to help cut down on lace bite, but in general, if you get stepped on in this area of the foot, there really isn't much protecting your foot whatsoever. Moving to the rear, you're going to find that the Pure Point 2 does maintain a low cut construction, although it's a little bit chunkier on the sides compared to the Point 1 and Plus models. The heel lining material is this super soft microfiber. It has the targeted kind of Achilles tendon side of the ankle padding like you'll find on the more expensive models as well, kind of similar to what we used to see on the Adidas X series, and in general it feels all right. We'll talk a little bit more about the depth of the heel as well as just the general shallowness of the fit of this football boot in just a second. And then the insole is fully glued in. You can see it has a mesh liner on the surface, but in general, again, at this price point, you kind of expect something a little bit more premium. This is legitimately just a flat piece of foam that they've cut to shape, glued in place, and called it a day, which totally works. It's just not overly premium for $130. And then there's the sole plate and stud pattern, where if you look at it side by side with the Point 1 variation, what you get on the Point 2 does look pretty well identical. The stiffener bar is a little bit less pronounced, the stud pattern is identical, the finish is a slightly different color as well, but the plastic used is entirely different, and this is where I think the majority of the weight gain is coming from. And unfortunately, this sole plate really suffers from that super awkward stiffness that a lot of Adidas takedown models have been plagued with for a very long time. This wasn't a great sole plate on the Nemesis takedown models back in the day, and now that it is 6 years later, it still doesn't feel great here on the Copa Pure Point 2. And again, it's not that it's bad, but when you compare it to other options that you can get for the same amount of money or less, I think it's well behind its competition. And then as far as the stud pattern is concerned, again, recycled from the 2017 Nemesis. It features kind of like these half conical shaped studs that have a little bit of a bladed edge to them. From a traction standpoint, it's really solid. You get that nice freedom to twist and pivot, but still plenty of bite when pushing off. I wouldn't say that it's a standout stud pattern, but realistically, most football boots in this category have something relatively simple, and these are no different. On feet, especially compared to the Copa Pure Point 1, the Pure Point 2 is incredibly shallow in the way that it fits. It just doesn't have any depth to it whatsoever, and I don't have particularly wide feet. I am slightly flat-footed, and you can see how far apart the two sides of the uppers are with the laces tied tight. If you're somebody with wide feet and or high arches, these are simply just not going to work for you. And it's not that the shallowness through the midfoot or the forefoot toe box area is an issue. I actually think they fit really well there. However, the lack of depth in the heel, which you can see where the grips on my socks are actually exposed. Normally they would be sitting against the heel liner. There's just not a lot of depth, and this is something that has kind of plagued Adidas takedown models as an issue for a long time. Some people don't mind it. For me, it drives me insane, and it's not that there's any heel slippage issues, it's just putting pressure on the lower point of your heel, and it has this sensation that your heels are going to pop out. From a stability perspective, I just have reason to believe that this isn't as good, and for me, I just don't think football boots should fit like this. It's not that they're unwearable, but the shallowness in the heel, for me at least, is pretty unacceptable from a feel and comfort standpoint. The sole plate also makes this upper feel a lot stiffer than it actually is. The leather is super soft, the material through the midfoot, this textile-based synthetic, also feels really good, but because of the awkward stiffness and thickness of this cheap takedown model sole plate, the boot as a whole just feels, like I said, a lot clunkier than it perhaps should. As far as width, like I said, these are definitely not suited for a wide foot type, and in terms of sizing, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, I think the Copa Pure Point 2 is overall a solid pair of football boots. These are definitely very wearable. However, I feel like they're a little bit imbalanced in terms of having this really thin upper with a shallow fit paired up with this sole plate that feels relatively heavy and clunky underneath your foot. I don't love the feel of the shallowness in the heel. And again, for the same amount of money or less, would I pick a Copa Pure Point 2 over the New Balance 442 version 2 Pro? Absolutely not. Those are better in terms of leather quality. You get more leather. I think they're more comfortable. They're significantly lighter and in general feel much more like high-end football boots. Again, it's not that they're bad. They're just nowhere near as good as other options you have for the same amount of money or less.